Hello and welcome to the Onelife Young Adults Book Club. We are on our second video for this book, The Power of Habit, which is phenomenal. If you've watched our first book, you'll know that was kind of all about the habit cycle. And this one is more about kind of organizational habits. And fortunately, we've got Ash here for this video as well, who was with us in the first one. And Ash, we've just spoken about that there were so many things in this section of the book. Every chapter was full of absolute gold. Would you just give us a bit of a rundown of what was actually included in this section?
Yeah, so this was huge. That, like Helen said, there's so much in here and we can't discuss it all, but some of the key ones were, you've got like your cornerstone habits. So those habits which for some reason that scientists don't really know why, but if you nail a cornerstone habit, other habits become easier and fall into place more. Your productivity goes up, stuff like that. So that's really important. Then you have like your institutional habits. So whether we realize it or not, those organizations we're a part of, our workplace, our churches, they all have habits. And it's about taking control of those habits. And under that comes like crisis, and how crisis can be the best time to change habits and make new ones. And then we had some more stuff on like self-discipline and willpower. And I know you're going to talk about this in a second, but like how willpower is a muscle which you can grow. Absolutely crazy. And then you had the final chapter, which kind of blew my mind a little bit, about how corporations and organizations kind of know our thoughts and our thought patterns and our habits better than us, and they use that to manipulate us. And I'm hopefully going to talk about that in a bit as well.
Yeah, it was all just so interesting and really thought-provoking, actually, especially what you're going to chat about, Ash. Some of the stuff that really stood out to me, like you said, was the willpower stuff. Willpower, we can kind of think that either we've got a lot of willpower and self-discipline or motivation, or we don't. And that might be the case, but actually willpower is like a muscle. The more we use it, the better we get at it. And I guess what really stood out to me in this, I was just thinking about this question of who am I becoming? And this is something we've kind of wrestled with as Onelife, kind of in our discipleship. Who am I becoming? And our habits have a huge impact on that. Whether we have the discipline of reading the Bible in the morning, whether we're part of a small group, whether we bother going, whether we kind of have daily prayer and worship as part of our habits, will change who we become. But actually, sometimes it can feel like if we don't have those habits in place, how do we do that? But actually, it's the sense of willpower and discipline, and we can grow that. And actually those kind of keystone or cornerstone habits that Ash was saying about, something like that can really impact those habits as well. So I don't know what that looks like for everyone else, but I just thought that was a really interesting concept. And the other thing that really stood out to me with that was he tells a story of a researcher going into a hospital somewhere in Scotland and giving kind of half of the patients. So these people had either a hip replacement or a knee replacement. They had a really long recovery ahead of them. So half of them, he gave this kind of goal setting notebook. So they would have to say, right, so I want to be able to do my exercises every day. And he'd get them to write out exactly what they were going to do. So if they want to do their exercises, he'd say, okay, but what would stop you doing that? They'd say, oh, well, getting up from the sofa would be really hard. So it's a question of, okay, well, what's going to make sure when you hit that moment, he calls them inflection points. When you hit that inflection point, that moment of pain, how are you going to push through that? And he found that the people who had written down their goals had a far, far higher likelihood of actually managing to complete them than the people who didn't. And that's literally by just spending probably half an hour writing out specifically the goals they wanted to achieve and how they would do them in those moments of inflection. And for us, what does that look like? I was reading this, and then in the evening, I really wanted to do a workout. And I'd been sat in this chair all day. I'd been at home. I couldn't really be bothered. And I thought, okay, this is an inflection point. What am I going to do? And so I put on an upbeat song and was like, right, this is going to be my little push through to mean that I can get ready and just go downstairs and do this. And it worked. And I'm thinking, okay, what are the inflection points? And just us being aware of those, I think, could make a really huge difference to the habits that we want to grow. So that really stood out to me. Ash, tell us a little bit about the stuff that stood out to you, because I'm really interested in this as well.
Yeah, so obviously I love everything Helen said as well, and I just love this section of this book, but especially that last chapter, like I mentioned, which I thought was just scary, crazy, just bonkers that a company like Target, which is obviously a huge corporation, especially in America, they have these guys who are so good at their job that they can analyze statistics and data so well that they can understand the way we behave better than we can. And it just links to habits in the sense that they understand our habits. They understand how human habits work. And then they use that to try and manipulate you, how they use that to try and get more money out of you. They use that to try and control how you live. And I just been thinking about, if we're meant to be leaders, if we're meant to be disciples of Jesus, we're going to so easily be getting distracted by those things if we aren't in control of our own habits, if we aren't aware of those habits we have, whether they're spending or whatever it is. I just think there's something so powerful about saying, you know what, I'm not going to give in to these corporations. I'm not going to give in to these people who want to control and manipulate us. I'm going to take control for myself. And like you said, that's part of thinking about who are you becoming, where are you going, how's your leadership. I just think, it's just so important, because I know for me personally, I don't want to be defined by what a corporation says I should be buying or doing or living. I want to be defined by Jesus and who he says I am and how he says I should be living. But I think it is so easy to get caught up in that if we're not aware of it.
Definitely. And like, we kind of all see it. We know that Instagram and Facebook kind of stalk what we say, and we get adverts for the things we talk about. But actually, even us clicking on those, it's saying, actually, I'm going to buy into this. And it is that question of, what are we going to choose to be different? How will we be set apart in those ways? I love that. It's really challenging, isn't it? And I guess the other thing that kind of came just before that was this whole chapter on the power of crisis, and how crisis is kind of the best time to change up habits, because people start to see the need for the habit shift. And right now, in this moment, we are going through what is probably the biggest crisis that most of us will see in our lifetime. Last year was just ridiculous in what happened. And actually this year is kind of the same. We are going through a crisis. So I guess our question is, what are we going to do? What habits do we want to shift? What has been put a spotlight on over this past year? Actually, we're like, do you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. Or do you know what? I really want to pick that up, because now is the time. We're going through a crisis. There was even a quote from a leader saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. People understand this. Now is the time to do it. And I guess, Ash, what for you over this crisis, would you say there are any habits you've maybe picked up, or something you're going to pick up as we go into this next year?
I
put you on the spot.
No, this is good. I think so. I think it's a bit of a vague habit, but I'm going to say it. I think like the habit of being willing to take risks. There's so many people who have just taken time or have had to have time to reflect, because they've had so much space about what they're doing, where they're going. And I think it's just this crisis we're in has sparked creativity. And I know that's happened in me, that I've found myself just being so much more creative and thinking of more stuff about what I'd love to be doing or whatever. And so I think that there can be a habit of taking a risk. So when that cue of an opportunity comes up or an idea happens, to habitually say, you know what, I'm going to have a go at this. And the reward is you either succeed or you fail, but you are rewarded by that sense of pride of had a go. So I think that for me is what has been forming, I think will continue to be forming in this crisis. What about you? I'm going to put you on the spot now.
I know I asked you the question, I hadn't thought of an answer yet. That's always a bad thing to do. Do you know what? I think quite similarly, I had a conversation recently about New Year's resolutions, and I hate setting New Year's resolutions because I hate failing at things, and so I don't set them, because I know that I won't be able to, often I found that I haven't been able to fulfill them. But actually that mindset, I got challenged on it by my husband, that mindset of like, isn't it better to try something and maybe not complete it all year, but do it for a week? Isn't that better than not doing it at all? So actually mine's quite similar in the fact of actually going for things and trying hard to complete them. So I want to learn Spanish this year, so picking up a daily habit of practicing that, which I haven't succeeded at so far, but I'm going to do. And actually I guess as well, just implementing this, like what I said about getting ready to do a workout and recognizing those inflection points. for me, I think will be a huge thing, because I'm probably naturally someone who doesn't have loads of willpower. I would say that's a muscle I really need to grow. So actually I'm trying to recognize those, and that's kind of what I've picked up from this chapter, I guess. So I'm not sure that really answered the question, but I'm going to go with it anyway.
No, that was great. Yeah.
Well, we'd love to hear what you guys, and what have you picked up from this? What habit are you going to put in place? How are you going to use this crisis moment to shift your habits, so actually we can be exceptional Christian leaders wherever we are, that we can look like Jesus, that we can point people towards him and lead in a way that shows them who he is and what his character is like. So that's kind of our question to you, and we'd love you to join us. Even if you haven't started reading yet, there's still time to pick up this book and have a read. It is brilliant. It's so much better than we can explain it. So we'd love to see you next time for that. And in the meantime, have a great month. See you soon. Right.